of the TestNG. TestNG is something which is used to build test cases. Okay, Selenium as a tool has just commands. We have seen Selenium so far. Okay, we have seen a lot of things. Right, and you must have realized that Selenium as a tool has just got commands which can interact with the browser. Okay, now TestNG helps us to write test cases, but TestNG is not something which was made for Selenium. It's a unit testing framework in general, but we use it with Selenium. Okay, the first thing is that you have to install TestNG. Okay, you have to install TestNG as a plugin inside Eclipse, and most of you must have installed it. Okay, but if you haven't, you can go to uh, TestNG website, go to their download section, and you will have the link, this link, right? Click on this link, install the version 7. This is the link. Okay, copy this particular link and open up Eclipse, go to help, install new software, put up this link and select TestNG and then select next, 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 and it will be installed in your Eclipse will also restart. You might get a small warning in between, you can ignore that. Okay. So once you have installed TestNG, I'm just going to make a new Java project. Okay. TestNG uh, project. Okay, I'll just call it TestNG project. Okay. Now, this is the source folder. In this, I'm going to make a new package. Okay, test cases. Now, TestNG helps you to write test cases. For example, if I have a simple class known as book ticket, fine, there is no main function in TestNG. Then you can make test annotations at the rate test public void book, or you can write search flight. So this function is treated as a test case. Okay, you can move the mouse over there, select the option add TestNG library. So TestNG version 7 would be added as a library. It will have different jars, right? And then you can move the mouse again over there and import the test annotation, right? And you can have this test search flight. Inside it, you can have your Selenium code. For time being, I'll just write searching flight. Then you can have at the rate test annotation, public void, say select flight. So this is the second test case. You can have multiple test cases in a single file. Okay, select flight. Then you can have, say, buy ticket. Okay, so over here I'll just write buying flight ticket. So I have got three particular test cases, fine, in a single Java file. Right. And if you want to run this, you can right click on it and select the option run as TestNG test. Okay, or you can go into run configurations and run it. Right. So you see that it's saying it's printing the output, okay, from the three functions, and it says that total runs are 3, passes are 3. Okay. And you also have a a little diagrammatic form of an output. Okay, but the thing is, if you look carefully, buy ticket is executed first, then search flight, and then select flight. The order of execution is not the same. Buy ticket is getting executed first. In the console also, buying flight ticket is printed in the beginning. Okay, right. So whenever you run it, this is going to give you the kind of output which you need. Fine. Now, how do you run it sequentially? To run it sequentially, you will have to prioritize the test. You have to write priority equals to 1, then priority equals to 2, then priority equals to 3. You have to prioritize the three test cases. Okay. And now if you run this, you can see that they run in the order in which you wanted. That is searching flight, selecting flight, buying flight tickets. Okay, it is running in the same order. Okay, right. Now the thing is, clear this. Right. I'll make one more class. Okay. And I'll call this class as say a simple test case like login test. Let me explain you the different annotations or different, you can say, or I'll explain you in this class only. Okay. Now in TestNG, there are different annotations. This is at the rate test annotation. Okay. Now there is another annotation known as at the rate before test. You can name the function anything. I'll call it before test. And you import the annotation. Right. And you just print inside it before test. Okay. And similarly, you have got the annotation after test. You can name it anything, function name, import it. So if you run this code, you see before test and after test are executed before and after executing all the test cases. Okay. So I can do anything. Maybe in before test, I can open the browser. In after test, I can close the browser and let the browser execute, let the three test cases execute on same browsers. Or maybe I can open the connection to a database in before test, close the connection to the database in after test. Okay, right. There is a predefined order in which these annotations run. I can put this before test, after test, anywhere. Okay, the location of these annotation functions, it doesn't matter. You can put them anywhere, but the order of execution is fixed. Fine. Now, similarly, you have got before method. Hold on. I'll write before method. This is one more annotation. And after method. Okay. So when you run this, you will observe that before method and after method are executed before and after every test. Okay, before and after every test annotation. So this is also used in Selenium, right? Maybe you want to run the test, each test on a different browser, then on before test method, you can open the browser and after method, you can close the browser. Okay, or for every test, you want to generate separate reports. So you can initialize the report of every test in before method and you can finalize the report of every test case in after method. So it is completely your choice. Fine. Now,
Ashish, one doubt.
yeah,
Uh, Actually, if there is any exception happened in test, then in that case also after test will work.
yes.
Okay.
If something bad goes inside the test and the test stops,
Uh-huh.
still these after functions, after method or after test work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So there is a predefined order in which these annotations they work. Okay. Now, how do we go and pass or fail a test case? Okay. If we have to go and uh, you know pass or fail a test, then let me just make a new class known as validations. Right. Just some sample function. Now in testing, if you see, we always have some actual value and we have some expected value which have to be compared. Vary with almost all the tests which we do. Okay, so we have some actual value in our mind or from the application basically. The actual value is from the application. It will be read from the browser, maybe the title of the browser, maybe the text on the browser. Okay, whatever you want. And there is some expected value which comes from your test data. And if both of them are not same, you have to fail the test case. For example, you want to validate if some text is there on the web page. So in expected value, you will keep the text. In actual value, you will extract the text from Selenium. Right. So both of them have to be compared. For that, we have got assertions. There is an internal class known as assert, which does the validation. Right. If I write assert dot, you will get the function assert equals. You have to give the actual value and the expected value. If you run this, you will see that it doesn't show you any failure because actual and expected was same. Now, if I make it different, okay, and now if I run it, so you see the test is failing. Failures are 1, and it says that expected was ABC, but actual was ABCX. So assertion can be used, assert equals can be used to compare two values. Similarly, you have got one more assertion which is used, assert dot assert true. What does this do? This takes in two parameters. Okay, one is a condition. 4 greater than 3, for example, you can write. The other is an error message. Okay, the condition, if it evaluates to true, 4 greater than 3 is true. If I run this, nothing will happen. There will be no failure. because I'm asserting true. I want this situation to be true. When this assertion will be used, I will talk about it in some time, but how it is working, just understand it first. It might look a little weird to you in the beginning. If I write 4 greater than 13, now this is false. If the condition evaluates to false, then an error message is thrown, whatever error message you are writing over here. So, you see that some error message will come up in the report. Okay. Well, basically, it can be used at different places. Like, for example, I can write element present. I can call a function, something like this. I can send the XPath of the element over here, and if the element is not present, you can throw the message that element not present. So if this function returns you false, okay, I can make a function like this. Public boolean is element present, which will say take the XPath of the element and return you true or false if the element is present or not. Okay, if it returns you false, then you know, it will fail and it will say that, let me come, and it will say that element not present, right? So it's used over here. So assert equals is one function which is used, which compares two values. Assert true is based on the Boolean condition true or false. Okay, if the condition evaluates to false, then you have this error message coming up. Right. And the third one is that at times, like you are very sure that the test case has failed. Like, for example, you get a 404 error, or you reach a web page after doing some operation where you don't want to be. So you are sure that the test has failed. So you can directly write assert.fail. You can send some error message. Okay, the failure message, some critical failure. So when you run this, it prints some critical failure. Okay. Anyone with any questions? Okay. Now, this is okay. The thing is, if an assertion fails, all right, any of the assertions, if I print, say, A over here and B over here, you will see that on running A is printed, but B is not printed. The test stops on this particular line. If an assertion fails, then the failure is reported in the TestNG output, but the test case stops on this particular line. At times, you don't want the test case to stop. You know that the failure is not a very critical failure, right? And it should be reported, but the test case should continue forward. I hope you got my point, right? So in that case, hold on. In that case, if the test has to continue forward, you have to use something known as, I'll create a new class known as soft assertions. Okay, you import this test annotation. Right. Now, how do you use soft assertions? How do you manage soft assertions? Soft assertions, first of all, can report multiple failures. Okay, this is hard assertion. This will simply stop the program. Soft assertion won't stop the program. It will keep on collecting the errors and report all of them. For using soft assertions, there is a class known as soft assert. Okay, and then you write soft assert dot assert equals. Right. You have to compare two values in assert equals. Similar to like we have assert dot assert equals. Right. But you can have multiple comparisons. Right. So this one is going to pass. This one is going to fail. Okay. Or soft assert dot assert true. Some condition 4 greater than 3 and give error message say 1. So this is going to pass because 4 is greater than 3. Okay, but on the similar lines, if I write 4 greater than 23, so this is going to be reported. Or you can report a direct error that soft assert dot fail. So this is also going to report a failure. So now with the help of soft assert, you can report out here 1, 2, and 3 failures. The program will not stop, and if I run it, I get a different output. I get 0 failures. This is because it is mandatory to write in the end of the test case soft assert dot assert all. This has to be the last line of the test, and when you run this, it will report all the failures. See, these are the 3 failures. Okay, reported failures is 1 because one test case has failed, but inside that test case there are 3 failures. You see, these are the 3 failures in results of running the test. You can see them. Okay, so assertions are one thing, which is like hard assertions. It will stop the program. Soft assertion will keep on collecting the errors in a bag and report them in the end. In case anything is present, when you fire soft assert dot assert all, they will be reported. Okay, like for example, in our say select flight, if I write a hard assertion assert dot fail, so if you run this, you will see that see select flight has failed. But after method of select flight is executed. See, before method and after method are executed before and after running each and every test, right? Even though select flight is failing, after method is surely getting executed. Okay, so the program will stop on this line in select flight, but before method and after method and before test and after test surely execute if the test cases they fail. All right, so it's very simple. In TestNG, we have at the rate test annotations. Then we have at after test before test annotations and after method before method, which are executed before and after the test cases. Right. Then in validations, we have got hard assertions which stop the program and soft assertions which can keep on collecting the errors. Okay. Now, suppose I'll remove this line. Suppose when I'm selecting a flight, I extract the flight number from the application. Now this flight number has to be passed over to the third test when I'm buying the ticket. Okay. So basically data has to be passed from one test to another test. Okay. Flight number is there which has to be passed over to the other test case. So there is known as something known as context, test context. Okay, hold on. There is something known as, I'll mark it in this box, test context. Test context, you can say it's a memory space which is common for all the three test cases. You can keep the flight number in the test context and then it can be shared with all the three test cases. Okay, right. So, like for example, in search flight, select flight, you can pass the object of iTest context class. So TestNG, you'll have to import this class. It gives you this automated feature, a predefined feature, in which you can pass the object of iTest context in every test. Okay, this will point to the same object of the iTest context, and you can set it in context. You can write over here context dot set attribute. The attribute name is flight, you can say number, and you can set the flight number over. And over here, you can print context dot get attribute. Set attribute will set the attribute in the context, and get attribute will retrieve whatever. This is like a key. Flight number is like a key. You are setting the attribute with the key value pair. Key is flight number, value is actually number. And when you write context dot get attribute flight number, you'll get the flight number. And when you run this, so you see that 1, 2, 3, 4 is printed over here in buying flight ticket. If you have any questions regarding this, then please let me know. It's very simple. You have to pass the object of iTest context and you can store the attributes in test context and you can retrieve them. Okay. Right. So, uh, guys, just a minute. I just need a glass of water. I'll be back. Just hold on. Just a minute. Okay. So I hope you have got my point. Fine. Now this is done. Okay, there is one more thing, right? Say in login test, right? Suppose I have the annotation at the rate test to login. Suppose I have to run this test multiple times with different sets of data. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So if I have to run this test with different sets of data, then you have at the rate data provider. This at the rate data provider is an annotation. This annotation helps you run the test case with different sets of data. Okay, suppose I have 5 sets of user IDs and passwords with which I have to log in. So what we do is that we make a two-dimensional array. Okay, we store the data in a two-dimensional array with some rows and some columns. The number of rows are equal to number of data sets you have. This is your data set 1. This is your data set 2, data set 3, data set 4. Right. Okay. So you can store your data sets like this. Say this is your username 1, password 1, some email address, some phone number, and then you can have the second set of data username 2, password 2, some email address, some phone number like this. So the number of rows are equal to number of times you want to run the test case. And the number of columns are equal to number of parameters in the test case. Okay. So number of rows are equal to number of times you want to run the test. So over here, you will have public object two-dimensional array get data. And we make an object array, a two-dimensional object array with say 3 rows and 2 columns. Okay. So it's you mention like this rows first and then column second. So we have got 3 rows and 2 columns. That means you want to run the test 3 times with and there are 2 parameters in every run. Okay, so we'll fill the data for the row number one, that is data 00 is username 1 and data 01 is password 1. Then you have row 2, username 2, password 2. And then you have got row 3, username 3, password 3. So you have got 3 rows of data. Okay. And you return this two-dimensional data array. Okay. So this is the data provider. Fine. You link the test with the data provider. You write over here that the data provider for this test is get data. Okay, so first step is that you make this data provider. You mention a two-dimensional object array inside it. You fill the data inside the two-dimensional object array. Second is that you have to tell the test case that the data is coming up from this data provider. And the third and the most important is the number of input parameters in the function should be equal to number of columns. If there are 2 columns in the object array, you'll have to write 2 input parameters. Those would be username and password. Okay. So when the test will run, you will see that it runs 3 times. Total test runs are 3. First with U1 P1, next with U2 P2, next with U3 P3. So it's all configuration, nothing else. Okay. You have to make sure that the number of input parameters are same as number of columns. So when the test is executed, row 1 data is first sent over to the test case, then row 2, and then row 3 data. And it executes 3 times. Okay, maybe you can print as well. Username and the password. So when you run this, you see that. Okay, so this will be first executed, then the second row will be executed, then the third row. Later on, we'll read this data from, say, an Excel file or a JSON file, and basically you can have your Selenium code over here, which had been hard coded with data till now. We were hard coding data, and now we can actually read the data from the source. I hope you got my point. Right. Now we have got these 4 different Java files. They have different test annotations. We can run these files together as well. Okay, suppose these are 4 different tests. Each test is having different test annotations. You have to batch run. Okay. So for that, right click on just any one of them and you'll get the TestNG option and go to convert to TestNG and click on next and finish. So you will have a file known as testng.xml generated. Go to the source and can remove this. This is an XML file in which we can mention all the test cases which you want to execute and they will be executed. Okay. The first test is say book ticket. This test name can be anything. All right. This is your test suite. You can give a name to the test suite, any name. Okay. Like learning test ng. Okay, this is the test case book ticket, and this is the class for the test case. It's inside the test cases package.java. This has to be the accurate name. If this name is wrong, then your test won't run. You'll get an error. This name can be anything, that this is the name of the test and this test is mentioned in this particular class. Similarly, you can have different tests. You can add this once more and call it login test, and this is inside test cases in login test. And then you can have one more known as say soft assertions, and this is inside soft assertions example class. And then another test which is validations, which is inside validations, right? So when you run this code, you can right click on it and run as TestNG suites. All the Java files will be executed in a serial order. You see that? Soft assertions and then validations. So book ticket all pass, login test, soft assertions failed, and validation. So book ticket was executed like this, and login test was executed multiple times, right? So this is how you can run it. You can simply right click, run as, and all the tests would be executed. Right. So testng.xml is used for batch running of tests. All right. And you can mention the test cases in a serial order in which you want to run them, and all of them would be executed. Okay. So this is all about TestNG. There are lots of other things in TestNG, lots of more things. But to begin with, these are the things which will be required. Okay, the annotations, login tests, soft sessions. How do you do the validations? How do you batch run the test cases? Fine. Anybody with any questions? Anything? Anything? Or it's confusing. Right. So